Imagine one of these global companies operating over 150 production sites, more than 30 R&D centers in 50 countries with a very complex matrix organization and a lot of recent acquisitions. When they call me as a consultant and a coach, I have the mission to clarify roles and responsibilities, work shares, communication processes, and to improve the quality of the cooperation between the different locations. What did we do concretely? We organized seminars for the international teams. We call them bridges, 2-day sessions with follow-up actions. To use a metaphor, to open the door of successful cooperation, we need several keys. Now, what sort of keys did we use during these 2 days? The first one is increasing cultural knowledge and awareness. Of course, nowadays, the employees of these countries are, in some aspects, very close to each other because they speak the same Globish, and their objectives are about shareholder values, quick wins, KPI, key performance indicators, vision, mission values, sort of common vocabulary, where the key motto might be, you have to deliver as quick as possible. But the software of our mind is not yet identical, and there are still differences linked to different family structures, religions, educational systems, and history. Let's start with communication. At the beginning of the seminar, a German manager asked his British counterpart, "How are you?" The answer was reasonably bad. And the poor German was a little bit upset and said, "What do you exactly mean?" Fortunately, we had the opportunity during the 2 days to let people share their perceptions, their assumptions, norms, and values. And some less experienced managers learn what British understatement means through the incredible quote of Captain Lawrence Oates, an Antarctic explorer, who said, before walking out into the blizzard to face certain death, "I'm just going outside and maybe some time." We talk a lot about communication, implicit and explicit communication. You might know that in Germany, when a bus passenger presses the red button to get off at the next stop, the sign that lights up announces bus stops, in German Wagen hält, while in France, the same sign says arrêt demandé, stop requested. Do you follow me? Good news for Germans, no worries. In France, buses stop too to let people get out. Same result, but different communication styles. We also discovered during the seminar what most Europeans associate with US culture. Well, efficient, goal and achievement oriented, but also, well, well-known negative points like shallow, superficial. These stereotypes and judgments reveal profound misunderstanding. There is no American superficiality, but simply another way of socializing, of creating very quickly a relationship which is not aiming to last. Where does it come from? This communication style comes from the times of the pious merchants. Arriving in New England, they had to express signs of friendliness to show that there is no harm, that there are nice guys. For this reason, Americans talk very easily to each other in airplanes, elevators, which often surprises many Europeans. Then Brazil. In our session, the Brazilian country manager clearly stated that jeitinho was sort of summary of the Brazilian culture, a creative way to solve problems. He gave 2 examples of jeitinho, giving good tips in a restaurant in order to avoid waiting in the queue to be seated next time, or quickly getting a government loan because you know someone who knows someone in the government. Concrete conclusion for the group, muddling through, circumventing rules, and of course establishing good relations are key in this country. Where does jeitinho come from? Well, it's a mechanism of self-protection in order to survive and to react against rules and laws imposed by the elites, starting from the slavery times until the emergence of modern Brazil. When we listen to the Australian participants, they stress the importance of the tall poppy syndrome. What is it? Well, just guess. It will be your homework, but I can't tell you that it's very challenging for a lot of Australian managers. Then we discuss with Korean colleagues the notion of Hans. It's a mindset, a facial expression frequently translated as sorrow, grief, regret. It's a sense of having been wronged by fate, fortune, government. Han denotes a collective feeling of oppression and isolation. Again, Korean history helps us to understand a strong class system structure and, above all, permanent foreign invasion, starting with the Han China, then, of course, the Mongol, the Japanese, and recently the division of the nation. In the company we are talking about, we have two decision centers, one in France, the other in Germany, with a complex matrix structure. And there are a lot of complaints regarding what they call lack of reliability on the French side and a certain rigidity on the German one. Let's try to understand. A very widespread decision-making style is in Germany, well, to take time to collect expertise, discuss different options with different operational levels, and then, and only then, to make the decision which will be binding for everybody involved. While in France, it's less preparation, tricky interaction with hierarchy, more top-down decision, and an elastic implementation, I would say, meaning adjustment, flexibility, margin of maneuver, or even refusal. And now, let's have a look at the map of Germany when the French Revolution started. We discover more than 200 autonomous territories, kingdoms, principalities, counties, 3 imperial towns. The Holy Roman Empire was just a loose construct, and the German nation, as you know, is today based on a federal system with quite autonomous entities. So what? Germans learned through centuries that the only way to find a decision, as they say in German, is, well, to take time, to have long negotiations, to build alliances, coalitions, in order to reach consensus. There is still in Germany a long process of debating and validating ideas and solutions, what we experienced recently in the great coalition of Angela Merkel's government. If we look at the French map, we discover a strong, centralized country with a very common expression in France, which is monter à Paris. I guess the French know that. Monter à Paris, climbing to Paris. Well, as far as I know, the elevation of Paris is just 35 meters above sea level. We are not in the Alps. But this notion of climbing to the capital of the country is symbolically crucial. It shows a strong central and distant authority. And in order to please the king, at the court of the king, you have to be political, diplomatic, tactical, and of course implicit in order to protect yourself, to CYA, as Americans would say. But as soon as you leave the center, you discover the second culture, the critical thinking, the grumble, rebellion, revolution, a strong emphasis on freedom of speech and irreverence, which is so deeply rooted in the French culture, a dissensus and not a consensus culture indeed. Our seminars are called bridges because we are building many bridges between people, between cultures. I will never forget the very grateful attitude of a young Slovak engineer who felt totally isolated in a very international group, his gratefulness was linked to the 30 minutes I had spent during the session just to talk a little bit about his country, about his history, the national hero of Slovakia, Juro Janosik, that nobody, of course, knew in the group except him. It gave him the opportunity to explain his colleagues a lot about his country, and for the first time, as he told me, he had the feeling to be part of the group. My choice today was to highlight this aspect linked to national culture. But in the session, we also addressed professional issues and explored difficulty and misunderstandings linked to, for example, differences between plans and sales, product-oriented engineers and sales customer-oriented people. Or, of course, on the other hand, relation linked to the past. It was so difficult for some of people to forget what I experienced in previous company. Using culture might be very beneficial, but not just in terms of knowledge, but a sort, as you might see, a Trojan horse for successful cooperation. What does it concretely mean? Cultural awareness and knowledge of managers and teams depersonalize the first issue and create a climate of understanding which fosters self-criticism, openness for diversity, tolerance when miscommunication occurs. The cultural key is important, but not sufficient. And now I would like to talk about our second key, which is creating islands of deceleration. Why? Because of the permanent acceleration we are experiencing according to the terms of a German philosopher called Hartmut Rosa. The present is contracted. We are living in a great rush. There is a huge acceleration of the pace of life for all of us, but more than any other citizens, employees of global corporations are exposed to the challenge of acceleration. Our message is very clear. Hurry up, but don't rush. It would be so important to have a little bit more time in this phase to share our experiences, is one of the key messages I got during the seminar. Creating islands of deceleration means quality time, building rapport, a common learning experience, the opportunity to discover the face, the person, and the personality behind the name of the org chart. And it's really key for developing trust and bonding. Tell me more, a key word. What made you what you are? It's better to talk with the partner than about the partner. Let's sit down and share our stories of work and life, our stories of challenges and dreams, as many as possible, as different as possible. These conversations avoid the danger of the single story of the culture, referring to an inspiring TED talk of Chimamanda Adichie. And these conversations are indispensable as they create empathy, understanding, and motivation. Sure, this takes often more time than expected. When we ask participants the very simple question, if your foreign colleague had to replace you tomorrow, what would he or she know about your constraints, your organization, and your day-to-day business? We spend 3 hours on this point because the ignorance of the other's reality was so deep. Undoubtedly, learning more about the colleague's constraints considerably improves internal communication and cooperation. Understanding the logic and coherence of the other party and developing a capacity for empathy is a prerequisite for success. Why is it so important? Because it also helps to fight the biggest enemy of any cooperation. I call it friendly avoidance. What is friendly avoidance? How was it expressed by participants? I quote, "We have a very friendly relationship, friendly when there is nothing at stake." Friendly avoidance just means not being able to put burning, difficult issues on the table. I can tell you by experience that it's a major source of conflict. To overcome this friendly avoidance, we need quality time and building rapport, but it's not enough. It's crucial to implement collaborative methods, focusing on high-quality talking and cross-pollination among the group. Managers and teams experience the added value of collective intelligence, learn about mindfulness, and develop participatory leadership skills. As a result, they proactively communicate and engage for the sake of the group, not just defending their local interest. Experience has proven that in difficult times, teams that consider these soft facts as a priority always solve hard facts better than others. I would like to present my third key, implementing virtual closeness. What does it mean? In the global business environment, managers and teams of one company are separated by geographical distance and time zones. The team cannot share the same physical space. There is sort of a loss of territory, no face-to-face interactions. The sense of community and the flow of communication is broken. Creativity and collective intelligence decrease. What needs to be done? Identity needs to be rebuilt by a common goal and a shared work process. A sense of virtual community has to be created. The right choices have to be made on tools. The aim is to get virtual closeness, not considering distance as an obstacle, but as a new resource. Our key message is that all this must be addressed and negotiated among team members in order to find the right balance between synchronous media, allowing real-time communication like phone calls, Skype, video conference, chat, instant messaging, and asynchronous media, sort of different time, different place model, like emails, discussion forums, newsletters, voicemails. A new space of collaboration has to be installed, taking into account what my Danish partner, Line Jelle, calls online identity competence, a new awareness of how we are perceived virtually and how we are able to build and to manage relationships in virtual context. You all perfectly know how boring it is to read hundreds of emails and how easy it is to delete them as well. If you succeed in creating a real virtual presence and you exist for the other, you solve this problem. Again, this must be addressed and negotiated among team members. Increasing cultural awareness and knowledge, creating islands of deceleration, implementing virtual closeness, 3 keys to open the door for successful cooperation. Very soon, it will be your turn, guys, to work in the global world and to take part in the global collaboration. So be prepared and don't forget the keys. Thank you.